Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Tula PID Talk, where in today's episode we will be discussing the topic gender identities and health. My name is Plern.
And my name is Plume Plume. We are first year medical students at Chulalongkorn University, and today we're here with a very special guest, Peanut. Peanut is a pediatric infectious diseases fellow and clinical researcher here at Chulalongkorn University. Thank you for joining us today, Peanut.
Thanks for having me today.
So, first of all, can you tell us what is the difference between sex and gender?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So sex is whether you're male or female, so the sex that's assigned to you at birth. So it's a physical form of your physicality, whereas gender is much more personal. It's something that you personally identify with. So people could identify as a heterosexual female, they could identify as a transgender woman, they could identify as a gay man. So gender is much more dependent on the individual themselves.
Okay. And how do these two terms, sex and gender, how do they influence health?
That's another great question. So sex, the physical form of it, will influence health in terms of hormones. So whether you develop into a man or a woman, and obviously the organs that you have will affect what health issues you're more likely to have. Whereas I think gender has much more implications because it then affects how you are likely to have health behaviors. So for example, if you're a transgender woman, which means that you're physically born as a man, but inside your brain, you feel that you identify as a woman and you feel attracted to men, it will affect how you try and adjust your physicality and your body so that it reflects what you feel on the inside. So for example, we have transgender women who come in to our clinic who dress as women, they have long hair, they take hormones. And going back to your question as well, how does that affect health? It does in many ways. So for example, if you're a transgender woman in Thailand and your personal identity card still says Mr., that means that many of our transgender clients worry about the stigma attached to that. And they also have other health issues that they worry about, such as feeling what's called gender dysphoria, which means that you feel that you've been born into the wrong body and you're struggling mentally and physically to cope with that. And other issues that you may have in terms of health-seeking behaviors are, say, if you were to have a risk event, so having risky sex, maybe your partner wouldn't use condoms, and so you were potentially exposed to HIV. They're less likely to come and see a doctor or seek medical attention for that because of the fear of stigma and discrimination from hospitals and healthcare staff. So a bit of a long answer to your question, but I think that it's an answer that I could keep going on and on about for another hour. But I think that gender and sex both impact health in many ways.
So nowadays, there's a really diverse range of gender identities in society. Can you share with us some common problems that this may lead to in terms of healthcare provision?
Yes. So, for example, the biggest group that we look after in our adolescent clinic is men who have sex with men. And your question on how does this affect health service provision? If, as a gender identity, they have certain health behaviors. So, for example, something that we've seen in our services is adolescent men who have sex with men are more likely to have sex partners who are quite a lot older than them, so maybe 10 or 20 years older than them. And those partners are much more controlling as to what healthcare services these young people will seek. And so if we have healthcare providers who are less familiar with this social dynamic, it will mean that it will become more complicated and more challenging to address their health issues. So that's one example. And another example that we see a lot is with transgender women. So transgender women are less likely to independently come and seek health services because they feel much safer, based on what we've learned working here. They feel much safer to seek health care as a group. And so if there's one person who is aware of what health services are available to them, they're more likely to come. But on the flip side, if a member of the group decides that they don't want to come, they're then less likely to come independently to seek, say, healthcare for a genital wart, or if, say, they're having suicidal thoughts and they want to seek healthcare from a mental health care professional.
So we've just talked about the problems associated with healthcare provision. But as healthcare workers, or even as normal citizens, what can we do to help mitigate these problems?
I think that there are many, many things that could be done to mitigate these issues. I think on an individual level, I think that everybody knows somebody in their either family, extended family, class, community that isn't heterosexual, isn't straight. And I think that acknowledging the diversity in your community and being respectful and sensitive to the needs of gender diverse individuals is a good place to start. And I think that if you're part of any kind of organization, I think it's good to be conscious and aware of how people who are gender diverse are treated in your workplace and what you can do to make your work practices more respectful to this. So for example, what are your policies on accepting somebody to be employed? Is there anything that's discriminatory in your criteria in selecting somebody to work for you? And I think at the larger level, so at societal level, I think that we need to advocate for gender equality for gender diverse people, whether it's to do with access to healthcare that is unique to them. For example, gender affirming hormone therapy is not available to gender diverse individuals at the moment. So that's something that as individuals we could try and push our local authorities to pay more attention to. And also I think that gender diverse people themselves need to be empowered to be able to express themselves fully. So whether this is through healthcare providers giving them a voice, whether it's through media like this, or whether it's through government, I think that at every level there are opportunities for us to support gender diverse individuals and their health.
So today we've discussed a lot about gender identities and how they influence health. So before we end our talk today, do you have anything you want to share to our audience?
I think that I would like to share that people are born with an identity. So I think it's not something based on my experience that people choose. So I think as healthcare professionals, you don't necessarily have to agree or understand completely where gender diverse people are coming from, but I think that it's important to be respectful and to be supportive to people who are different to you. So if there's one take-home message that I would like to give to our audience, is to just be caring, be loving, and be respectful to your patients, regardless of what gender they are.
Wow, that's a really good take-home message. And that is all the questions we have for today. Thank you so much, Peanut, for answering them. And also thank you for watching. See you next time on Tula PID Talk.